This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Good evening, my friends. I can't tell you how excited I am to say that. I have missed all of you so much. And if you've been following me on Facebook, no doubt you have seen the adventures that I've been posting about my trip to the UK. It was absolutely beyond expectation. I had so many wonderful experiences to meet brilliant people who I will have, no doubt, lifelong friendships with and will learn from, and I'm incredibly excited about that. One of those people is my guest tonight, Gary King, and I will be introducing him in a moment. But first, I want to talk about a friend, another person I met on my last day over in London, and he is a researcher and a remote viewer. His name is Tunde Antrase, and he has a beautiful book that I've had for quite a while, but he gave me a signed copy when I was over there. It's called Remote Viewing, UFOs and the Visitors. You can find that on Amazon, and I would highly recommend you doing that. It is a great book, and it was a fascinating time meeting Tunde. I look forward to learning more about remote viewing because it is a very, very intense thing, an intense field, and hopefully we'll get him on the show pretty quick. Next week, I have the privilege and honor of having Dr. Richard Haynes from NARCAP on the show. If you know his work, you know that he doesn't do a lot of interviews. And I don't think he's done a radio interview for years. So this is a rare chance to learn about science and how it's applied to UFO research, UAP research, and to learn more about NARCAP, incredibly important. On my recent trip abroad, I had a series of happenings that were quite unusual. I contacted my friend Peter Robbins before I went over there, and I said, "Hey, Peter, you've got to introduce me to somebody who is of like minds, who is very brilliant, who wants to hang out with me and teach me things." And he told me about my guest tonight, Gary King. So he was gracious enough to introduce me to Gary, and Gary was gracious enough to welcome me with open arms into his world. And 2 days before I left, a very important crop circle appeared in Wiltshire at the Ansty Farms. And this crop circle has really set the whole world abuzz because it is, it's fueled speculation that this was a result of a hoax, and this was actually a publicity stunt by Mothership Company, and all of this stuff. It's been really interesting to see. But I stepped into this crop circle with Gary, and he took me around and showed me all of the reasons why he believed that it was a very genuine circle. I had a fascinating day, not only with Gary, but then with Michael Glickman, who was another respected crop circle researcher, a brilliant, lovely human being. And to watch the interaction between Michael and Gary as they met face-to-face for the first time since the discovery of this crop circle was truly a special moment that I will never forget. I had chills. It was incredible. So I can't wait to talk more about this and the research that Gary and his brilliant team have found out since I have been over in the UK. Gary began researching the crop circle phenomena in 1997. It came to the public's attention after he and 3 other witnesses were present at the Eastfield formation July 7th of 2007. If you have not seen this footage, either go to my Facebook UFO Classified page or go to YouTube and find this. It was incredible. Gary has worked internationally and has been in many different TV productions regarding the phenomena. He is an excellent and much sought-after tour guide. I was incredibly lucky. He has a wealth of experience and knowledge, and I will say I have met very few people in the field who have a passion, a dedication, and integrity. So, Gary, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, and you're awake.
Thank you. Yes. It's late here in the UK, 12:15 already, but I'm awake, I can assure you, and I'm very energized to be talking with you, Erica. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. I just have to again say that I had such a remarkable experience with you and going out there to this beautiful farm where the crop circle appeared. And I actually did talk with some of the people that worked there. They were perplexed, and I think they were very overwhelmed by the amount of people that were at the farm.
Yeah, they were. It was one of those. I mean, of recent years, we've had, the farmers have taken different attitudes of the crop circles. Some of them have been very open and mystified by them, and certainly in the early days that was the case. But there's so many factors here on the ground with these things appearing on farm land and the relationship that we have to have with farmers, that this particular one being open to the public has been positive in one sense, because we could go in there without getting angry farmers chasing us out of their fields. But it also added to the controversy that it was all a put up job to raise money and as a money making or promotional idea. So there's all these double ways of looking at this particular story, which seem to fit, whichever narrative you are more suited to in some funny kind of way.
Isn't that interesting? And I know that, of course, we paid an entrance fee to go into the circle, which, in my opinion, being a business owner, I understand. They have to make a living. So why wouldn't they do that to try to recoup some money lost with the crop? I don't understand why people think this is such a horrible idea.
Well, it depends on how many people visit the crop circle and what they're charging. There have been instances where I believe in 1996, when the big crop circle happened in outside Stonehenge, that the farmer put an oil drum out there and asked for a pound entrance, and I was told that he made thousands and thousands of pounds off of that. And so people can make the assertion quite easily in some instances that it's a money-making scam to bring people into the area, to rise bed and breakfast, tourism and so on and so forth. So there's all these sorts of arguments that can be made on the money front. But I'm assured by Karen Price that the cost of the wheat, would probably be about £150 that's been damaged. So that would have been recouped probably in a day, really easily, with who went there. And the rest of the money she's donating to the air ambulance service, which is very, very important to the farming community who live out in the middle of nowhere. They rely on air ambulances to take sick people to hospital, which is not government funded. It's all funded by charity. So they're very heavy donators into these causes, and I totally believe that that's where she's going to send the money.
And that's a really wonderful thing. And I understand from talking to you and hearing different reports on the internet that her and her family, or her and the people that work there, have been under a lot of stress since the news broke about the formation, which is unfortunate.
Well, increasingly so. At first, they were mystified and they didn't know what to do. And it made some of us, myself included, miss the fact that the formation actually came down on the 5th of August, or they discovered it, let's say, on the 5th of August. And whilst the owner was on holiday, the staff found it, didn't know what to do, and called her up. And they looked on the internet to find out what other people did. And some other farmers, particularly one at Hackpen Hill over recent years, has opened a charity box and donated it to his local charity. So they went ahead with that and opened and announced it on the 12th. So that was first reported to the Crop Circle community on the 12th of August. And that date, the fact that it appeared a week or so before, was also added to further conspiracy theories that it was all been some big cover-up. But she's openly said, no, it came down then, we didn't know what to do, and there was some hesitation and so on, and then we decided, let's open it to the public. And so that's when we first heard of it. In answer to your question, though, about increasing stress, she was mystified at first, but then after a week, 10 days, 2 weeks of then all of these stories coming out and people coming in and intruding the space in a sort of unfriendly way or pushing their way in, it got to her in the end.
And that is unfortunate. I know that somebody took a video camera in there and videotaped some of her employees and then posted that all over the internet. And I mean, these are young girls, so I'm sure that that's had the repercussions have been felt about, doing that. I don't necessarily agree with that sort of tactic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wrote a report, a blog. I write a blog called Against the Grain on a WordPress blog. And I wrote a report about this, about my experiences and so on. And in that, I included that's exactly what Karen had reported to me, that, people coming in there and pushing the camera in her staff's face without permission and then posting them on the internet made them very distressed. And she felt, quite rightly, that she has a duty of care to her employees, who are young girls, probably, under 20. And they felt that they'd had their rights invaded by this, and they were questioned constantly by everybody asking the same questions, which they'd replied to repeatedly. The same thing, they didn't know anything about it. And then obviously because they're young, they go on the internet and they saw the things that were being said, that they were involved in some big cover-up and that, everything they said was being twisted. They all started to get very defensive, and they're not media savvy people, they're farming community people. And so, I think it's overwhelming, really, overwhelmed them, really, of how public it got. The Daily Mail, a national newspaper here, published a story about it, and Karen told me herself that she'd never spoken to the Daily Mail. They'd taken her quote off of the internet and just published it, and she'd never heard from them.
That's bad journalism.
It is. The Daily Mail are not a particularly good newspaper. They did a story on an incident I had last year, and the way they wrote it up was particularly nasty and very biased towards another side, let's say, but that's another story. It's funny. It's funny.
It is. And to me, I think more than anything, after I experienced that it was such a beautiful experience to be there and to see the intricacy of this circle and to see the people in the circle taking up the experience, but then to see how quickly this contingent came out of the woodwork. And, to my knowledge, I'm not sure if some of these people had ever stepped foot in the circle or spoken with the farm owner or Karen. And then they're making all of these statements about it being a hoax and then the fault of, or that, this is mothership glass and all of this stuff. It was really interesting for me to see. And then I compare that to what happens in America with the field that I'm involved in. And I don't see a lot of difference. And that's a really disheartening thing to see.
Well, yeah, it's become political, this whole arena, hasn't it? Let's say from Roswell, let's say, Jesse Marcel goes out and discovers, what the farmers told him is something that's crashed on his farm. For 3 days or whatever, I'm not a ufologist, so if I'm vague on some of the notions of it, forgive me. But as I understand it, he was sort of open, and it was on the radio and newspapers printing it and all this sort of stuff. And then he's told to stand in front of cameras with some tin foil. And this whole kind of, negative thing that surrounds anybody that sees a UFO or films a UFO or thinks that there might be something involved in crop circles seems to automatically create an opposite political side, like James Randi against the magicians or the shamans, saying it's all trickery and whatever. The world we live in is very dualistic, and so we seem to see things. The media always plays things off in a very dualistic way, right wing, left wing politics, and so on. That we it's a narrative that we get stuck into, and so I think it's a human trait for us to sort of polarize, and that's a shame, really. In a lot of ways, it stops progress, and lots of things get thrown around and are unnecessary.
And that is so true. I mean, I look at, especially on social media, the nastiness that people, I mean, people don't, because they get to hide behind a computer screen, they don't think that their thoughts or comments have repercussions. But I look at, Karen Price and her employees, and I think, if you're going to accuse somebody of basically fraud, then you have to have substantial evidence to back that up, which would be names. You have to have statements from the company, which to my knowledge, that has never even happened. Mothership has never made a statement. Is that correct?
The Mothership to date have not made a statement. The journalist Linda Moulton Howe, who from earthfiles.com, made an investigation. She spoke to insiders in the glass industry, some glass manufacturers from Ohio, and she also spoke to their digital marketing people. And these guys are very secretive. The digital marketing people only ever met them once, and that was when they hired them. They've never had any other contact with them since. Whenever they do a sale of these pipes that they manufacture, they contact people who are on a list who can afford them, and they get invited to a sale at like 1 o'clock in the morning at a specified location that's sort of handed out at the last minute. And it's the way they conduct their business and the way that they interact with the world is solely through their Facebook page and the website that they publish the pictures of their artwork and their stuff on. Other than that, they're completely mysterious. They have this complete air of mystery around them.
That is interesting. And I reached out, I think I told you, to try to get a comment from them, but of course, nothing. I think, and it is interesting, and it would be interesting for somebody to do a little research on the company and see what other types of marketing they've done, and if this would be something that would be in their ballpark.
Well, they only formed in 2012, so they've only been around about 4 years, and that's when they hired this guy to do their sort of digital marketing, and he's never had any other contact with them since. It's all done how it's done, through Facebook or whatever, and that's their only interface with the world. He's never seen them since. He's had contact with them, but he's never seen them face to face ever since.
Oh, that's interesting. And that says a lot. Yeah, that is incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to when you and I stepped into the circle and you were telling me specific reasons as to why this was a genuine crop circle as compared to a hoax. One of my listeners who I love, UFO author, wants to know what aspects of the circle give it credibility. Well,
I try to come at it from a very grounded perspective because I'm not a scientist, and a lot of people have taken different approaches to the crop circles of how they want to authenticate a genuine one. And there's a story to this, because in the early days when crop circles, let's go back and look at Colin Andrews. He brought the name crop circles to the world because he's the one who stopped his car, walked out into the field, scratched his head and said, what the bloody hell are these circles? That got people up in helicopters who flew across the south of England, across Wiltshire, and saw hundreds of circles, just simple circles, spread out across fields randomly, as if a giant had flicked a paintbrush across the landscape, with seemingly no meaning at all. They were just hundreds of ones, let's say, because if a circle represents one, they're hundreds of ones, just spread out randomly. So Colin Andrews took a note of this and thought, what's going on? And for many years, people were theorizing that they were weather vortexes and and plasma and all sorts of meteorological phenomena was put forward for an explanation. And Colin done studies with electromagnetism, and people were going out with all sorts of gizmos and meters and saying, what's this and what's that. And the man-made theory never came about until these two guys, Doug and Dave, come out and said it was all a big hoax. We've been pulling your leg all along, sort of thing. Up until that time, it was all other theories. Now, after that, all sorts of things got underway, like Operation Blackbird that Colin Andrews was involved in, to do a night watch and watch these fields and try and catch things on cameras and all sorts of other equipment. And and so there's this whole story of after this where he gets basically pulled into a crop circle that's been found in the morning, and there's a TV crew there, and they say, "What do you think of this, Mr. Andrews?" And he scratches his head and looks around and says, "Yeah, I think this is a genuinely mysterious event." And they say, "Well, welcome." When they welcome in a couple of blokes who spent the night there with the boards, and basically it kind of discredited how you examine and authenticate a crop circle. And so people go along and say, "Oh, if there's bent or blown nodes, Nancy Talbot and BLT Research done lots of things in crop germination, from taking the seeds and replanting them and doing all these sorts of scientific tests." I'm not an expert on those things. What I look for, in a grounded way, is to say, okay, if the farmer's telling me, and I believe them, and witnesses and all the area and the proximity of the crop circle is telling me that it wouldn't be possible for people to construct that kind of diagram into crop in the hours of darkness, which would be about 300, 400 minutes maximum in the night. When I look at comparisons of people who've made crop circles, like the Mozilla Firefox example, they took 23 hours, 12 guys to make a 200-foot Mozilla Firefox on flat ground. That violently confronts the complexity of that design that we walked into, which yes. I'm now confronted with having been made in one night. Colin Andrews says it was made over 3 days. And this piece of evidence, where we've interviewed witnesses and talked to the locals and so on and so forth, is saying, no, that didn't happen. This wasn't there one night and it was there the next morning.
And isn't that interesting? I think that we're going to touch on that more, because were so many witnesses or people involved in this area, and I think that's important to drive home, because really at the end of the day, the witness testimony is the most important thing for all of our work. I mean, this is the foundation of what we're doing here. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified. You're listening to KCOR, and it's Ladies' Night. So stick around. The best is yet to come.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. Where'd that shot come from? Alpha 3 to Eagle 1. We've got company.
From Tate Publishing, codename Eagle Force, the saga begins.
I see them, Alpha 3. All units stay low and let them come.
From the eyes of a special ops officer, Joe Michael Riggy brings to life this amazing story of survival, the unknown and the unexpected.
Here they come. Hold your fire. Hold. Now.
Codename Eagle Force at TatePublishing.com.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
When danger is imminent, will you be prepared? Now many mobile devices can bring you critical information from local sources you trust. With the unique sound and vibration, wireless emergency alerts keep you in the know wherever you are. Learn more at ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, for Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Happy Fantopia Friday and welcome back to KCOR Digital Broadcasting Network. I'm Erica Lukes and I am thrilled to be back. I have missed doing this. In fact, I was actually back from my trip to the UK last Friday and I was wishing that I was doing a live show, but I'm here now and I've got some wonderful shows coming up. I'm really blessed next week to have Dr. Richard Haynes on the show, who is with NARCAP, brilliant man. Please tune in and share that because we all need to be understanding the gravity of NARCAP's work and particularly Dr. Haynes. I am here with a crop circle researcher who has become a friend, and I will say that I've learned a tremendous amount from him since my experience in the ANSI crop circle formation. Gary, welcome back to the show, and thank you for staying up so late. This is so kind of you to do.
A pleasure.
Absolutely. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about Colin Anders and Operation Blackbird and some of these things. And you said something that I really respect. You said that you're not a scientist. And my question to you, and I think this is important to stress, is how many people involved in this field, how many quote unquote researchers are actual scientists?
Well, not many. Here's the thing, you see. No serious scientists are really going to touch this. And you've got to get funding money to do any really serious scientific research. So, universities aren't going to touch it because of the stigma that's associated with aliens and UFOs and all that sort of, what always gets pushed into the fringe. But having said that, Levengood and Burke with Nancy Talbot set up BLT research, and I looked at this research as I went through my early years, going over, okay, trying to understand some of this stuff. And some of the things stuck out, the physical effects on the plants being that if they are heated up rapidly, the steam from the moisture inside is what causes these nodes to expand abnormally and blow holes in them to release the pressure. And if you find these holes in these nodes inside the formation and don't find them in the controls taken from outside, that it indicates that there's been some kind of energy, which they determined to be microwave energies, that were rapidly heating the inside of the plant. But then also soil samples that were done. And actually, a man in Holland published a peer-reviewed paper on his study of the soil samples in crop circles. He determined that like all the time, iron dust is falling to the earth, and so if you take a soil sample, it will always contain a certain amount of iron because it's there, and so pretty much anywhere you can gauge how much the soil will contain of that. And what they found was that the circles distribution of this in its intensity radiated out from the center to the outside of the circumference of the formation, and they found that spherical balls of iron that had congealed together and so on, and the distribution of it was in such a manner that it worked together with the way that we use the theory of light and how it radiates out from the center to the encompassing side of the room. So the fact that he'd done some scientific studies and they'd been published in a peer-reviewed paper, and there were physical anomalies, showed us that, in crop circles that had been studied, a limited number of them, that there were anomalies found. Levengood's final thing I want to say on that is Levengood's study, which was authenticated in that he determined that if seeds were taken from the heads of the wheat at certain times of their growth period, so for example, if whatever it is, the energy that impacts the wheat, if the crop is young, a few weeks old, 5-6 weeks old, just gone into maturation, still green, it gets impacted. It's still got a lot of moisture, so it survives. And if you take the seeds, the mature seeds from those, and he planted them and germinated them, he was finding that they got up to 10 times more yield from the wheat, i.e. that the seed heads that grew from these new seeds had more seeds on them, right? Mm-hmm. So now, because he understood that microwaves, electricity, and magnetism were these three forces that he determined that were involved in energies, terrestrial energies that are used and manipulated in laying down the wheat, he began doing tests on seeds in his laboratory and applying electrical impulses to seeds at certain stages of their growth. And he managed to get about 25% more growth. And so he patented the process, and it was accepted as a patent for making increased yields from wheat, something that he'd learned from his study of the crop circles. Now, as a non-scientist, I'm intelligent enough to know that this is something that must be important if someone's determined this sort of stuff from what they found inside crop circles.
Absolutely. And I want to just say that you are an brilliant man, and you have a law degree. I mean, you were a lawyer before your experience affected you and you decided to go down this rabbit hole. So even though you are not a scientist, you're incredible. You're brilliant. You have a mind that can put things together. You understand the way things are, and you have really delved into finding out all about every single aspect to this. And that's commendable. And coming from somebody who's an artist and not a scientist, for me, this has been a huge learning process, but one that I enjoy. And to me, I really feel that it's people like us that are out there doing the work, and hopefully we'll do good work that hopefully someday we can really get people involved in the scientific community and get them to take this seriously, because it needs to be studied scientifically.
I think from all angles, yeah. I think that's one of the things I love about crop circles, and is that there's so many different ways of coming at it, and in a funny kind of way, they all link up. But you only get to see that after spending years with it and looking at it from your own perspective. Because you're non-funded, you tend to take the slant on the crop circles that are in line with your own interests. And so the geometry and its connection to cosmology and philosophy of mind and those kinds of things was interest to me. Its connection to the ancient sciences of the 7 liberal arts, which contain language, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, are ways of using the mind. You understand the grammar of something, you understand logic to work out the argument, and rhetoric is the wisdom that comes out of once you've analysed a piece of data or argument or theory. You've sifted out the fallacies, the logical fallacies, and the rhetoric that comes out is the wisdom, the refined truth, let's say. And the 4 liberal arts that went with that were number, geometry, which is number in space, music, which is number in time, and astronomy, which is number in space and time, study of the heavens and the movement of the heavens. And these formed part of the study of the outside world and the inside world of our minds and how we express it through language and so on. So because I went to university, back in university in 2004, and studied language and communication, how our mind makes sense of symbols and signs and semiotics and all the connotations in things of how subtly we communicate with each other in the world. I've particularly focused my studies into those areas, and they link up with Michael Glickman's studies of geometry, with how his revelations in digging out the inner hidden geometry that we found in crop circles. I wouldn't have been able to get as far as I could with my studies without his work, and without Steve Alexander taking the photographs or Lucy Pringle taking the photographs, we wouldn't be able to see them. And so we all, there seems to me to be a message to say that we all need to cooperate and communicate with each other, whichever way we're coming at these things, because when we come together and discuss it and debate it and sift out the nonsense, and we can help each other get to the truth of what might be going on.
And that is so beautifully put. And I think that's the way I feel about ufology. We just don't have people that want to share information or communicate. And luckily, I have sifted through some of the nonsense and found people that are oftentimes kind of go underground because of the abuse they take. But I think that in both of our fields, we need to really work on the ethics of this and not take to social media to insult people. And that's what I have seen with this ANSI crop circle formation. It's been a very, very interesting thing to see. And I want to go back to that a little bit before we go into your relationship and work with Michael. As far as the ANSI crop circle, tell us a little bit more about, right after you received the call, your team went down there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's it really. When I first saw it, my first impression was wow. And it particularly struck me because of the symbols around the outside, and that I'd been refining a lot of my studies into a lecture that I'd given a couple of weeks before at Devises, at the summer lectures here, about language and about how we use an alphabet and how we read the alphabet using our eyes to hear our own voice in our head, and how that evolutionary way we'd rewired our senses once we began to use an abstract alphabet as a way of reading symbols. And so I talked about the fact that somebody had heckled me in a lecture once as I began it, saying, if the aliens have got a message for us, why don't they just write it in the alphabet in the fields? Why don't they just tell us what the message is? Why are they playing all these games with us? They get us to be divided in a way with each other because it's ambiguous. And I thought it was a very good point, even though it would be ridiculous and no one would ever take, an alphabetic message in the field saying, be kind to each other. They'd just laugh it off. But I took the question and wrote that into a kind of presentation that I gave them. So when I saw this crop circle at Anstey, I immediately thought these symbols, they look like an alphabet. So I jumped on it, and I couldn't go down there at the time. So I rang Stephen Grant, and said, have you seen this formation? He said, I'm there now. So I said, right, okay, listen, I need you. Who are you with? And he's got somebody with him. I can't remember who his friend was. And he said, I said, right, I need you to do a report. Jaime Maussan's already been on from Mexico. I can't get down there. I need you to ask questions. I need you to give me a layout of the land. Go and talk to the neighbours. Go and talk to the farmer. Get a sense of what's going on. Ask them if they knew anything about it. Did they work with a company to commission it, and so on and so on and so forth. And so he immediately went to that task, and he spoke to the neighbours, and he spoke to the neighbouring farmer. He also came home and phoned them up to ask more questions later. And whilst he was on the phone to Karen, who had remembered seeing him and talking to him earlier, he heard the neighbouring farmer's wife come in because she interrupted the phone call and said, "Hang on, I need to speak to my neighbour, my friend." And he overheard the conversation where the neighbour's wife said, "Is this true that we've got a crop circle in the field?" And Karen said, "Yeah, it's just appeared." And he overheard this interaction with her neighbour, where they were completely surprised, and where she was saying, "Well, where is it?" And she said, "It's over there," and directed her to go and have a look at it.
Isn't that fascinating? And those innocent exchanges for your investigator to overhear that really is quite telling.
Yeah, it's absolutely telling. It's and it fitted in with what I experienced when I went down there with you when we spoke to the members of staff, and it fits in with what Lucy Pringle experienced when she spoke to them, what Jaime Maussan experienced with them, and we also experienced the flip side of it because I went there like 3 or 4 times. But at the end, when she was Karen quite rightly and understandably overwhelmed, I hope she calms down and that can see it in a different perspective, and we'll open up a little bit more about it in the future. But at the moment, I can really understand from her point of view why she's not wishing to add fuel to the fire, as she said to me.
No, I don't blame her at all. And to me, this parallels what happens here in the United States with people coming forward with UFO sightings, and then immediately, some quote-unquote researcher comes forward and debunks their sighting and it really makes them feel like a fool. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do for multiple reasons. I think that first of all, you are, even if the person coming forward is wrong, like say they saw Venus or something like that, you should be instilling a sense of, congratulations, you came forward, you had the courage to come forward. Let me teach you about the nighttime sky. You shouldn't be automatically rushing to judge. You have to encourage people. And I think when you have a case like this where you're accusing a hardworking person and her staff of being complicit in this hoax, that's a very dangerous thing to do. And I think that there could be some legal repercussions.
Well, I mean, I've thought about it in a legal sense because I should say to you, I don't have a law degree. I was like what you'd call a paralegal. But I think of things in a completely legal way because I worked in that profession for a good number of years, and I've always thought about how rules of evidence and logically working through arguments and so on would go. Let me just regain my chain of thought because I've lost my chain of thought by saying I'm qualifying the law degree.
No. Thank you for clarifying that, and I apologize for not having that straight. But as far as accusing somebody of defrauding the public,
I mean, I wonder. You see, because Colin, it's quite interesting legally if you think about it, right? Colin has said that he knows the people who made the crop circle. He's reliably informed through his investigators that he hasn't named, that he knows these people that he hasn't named, that he assures us made this crop circle in collusion with the farmer over 3 days, and that surprises will come when all the story comes out. But it hasn't come out yet, and we wonder whether it will come out in the future given what we've spoken about with Mothership Glass. But if he knows these people, and Karen says that she didn't authorise anybody to make this crop circle, then these people committed criminal damage because they went on her property and damaged it with boards. That's criminal damage. That's a criminal offence. And Colin has openly admitted that he knows the people who did it. So he's an accessory to the crime, or he has information which under a subpoena he would have to put forward. It's kind of interesting if it came to that. Now, the thing is, I don't think the farmer's ever going to want the publicity of going down that road, given how she's already taken a stance. So I don't think it would ever come to that. But I thought that through in a kind of legal way and thought, well, if that's the case, then that must be the case, and so on. So that's kind of interesting as well, isn't it?
It is, and I think that we have to be very careful with our comments with regard to things like that. Because,
I don't know.
You know, and I mean, this has, you know, when you come out and make a blanket statement like this, it has repercussions, not only for all of the people investigating things, but for the families of people, for their livelihood. I think unless there is substantial evidence, names, dates, official statements from companies, different things like that, those are the types of things that I would need as an investigator to be able to come forward, you know, and I think that we need to have a bit of ethics with regard to this. And granted, I don't know the first thing about the crop circle community. This has been a huge education for me, and so I'm sure that there are reasons for people not coming forward with names of people that are obviously maybe perpetrating crimes. I don't know. Maybe you can enlighten me on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the police were interviewed for a documentary some years ago. A police officer in Marlborough gave a very lengthy interview, which is available, I think, on Netflix in a documentary. Some of the excerpts of that interview, but the full interviews, I think, on YouTube of what this police officer gave out. And basically, if you look at it from the point of view that it's all hoaxes, you see, then this massive crime wave has been going on for 30 years. And the police haven't caught anybody. The only person that they ever caught or convicted of a crop circle was a man called Matthew Williams. And he put it about that he'd made a crop circle. And it was a seven-fold crop circle, as I understand, seven-pointed star. And the division of a circle, just to go a bit technical on you for a moment, is quite difficult because it's 51.51 degrees. So when you divide a circle by seven, it's actually quite technical in a way. So the execution of a seven-pointed circle was something quite special to Michael Glickman. And Matthew Williams putting it about that he made it led to the farmer getting in touch with the police and saying, this guy Matthew Williams is admitting he did this criminal damage on my land. So the police went to Matthew Williams' house. There's a board with a rope attached to it leaning against the door, and the police say, we've heard you've made this crop circle. And he says, okay, Governor, you've got me. And they take him to court and he gets a fine or whatever. And there's forever thereafter publicised as the man who makes crop circles, and that therefore, two and two together, all crop circles must be man-made. But other than that, the police, through this massive crime wave of over, sometimes in years where we get over 100 formations, on average sort of 50, 60, 70 formations a year, where farmers' fields are being, invaded, damaged, crop being lost, subsequent crop. It's not so much what happens with the crop circle, it's what happens with all the visitors who then come and knock farmers' fences over, trample across standing wheat, damage their fields. It's a massive crime wave, and they've never caught anybody.
That's interesting. And why people don't stress that fact is beyond me. I mean, it's been very curious to go back and do some research and see how all of a sudden, one day this was written off to be a man-made hoax. And it would appear to me that there's substantial evidence to say that is not the case. And to me, looking at the American sentiment of this, I mean, we've written, a lot of researchers that I respect over here have written off what's happening over there with the crop circles because of this. And I think that is unfortunate, and we need to re-examine that.
There are a lot of factors which, take a little bit of focus and looking at, but the most common sense thing to me is there's two issues. The one that you've already raised about what happens to people who come forward, and my own personal experience of that. For 10 years, I researched crop circles kind of under the radar and stayed away from all the organisations and all the rest of it because I didn't want to get involved in politics and wanted to focus on what I was dealing with for myself as much as I could. But then in 2007, when Paula and I and Wynne were up on top of that hill and the crop circle, appeared in front of us, we had some decisions to make about what we were going to do about this in terms of the media and the press and so on. And how we were going to come forward with a statement and what was going to happen to us. And I remember I spoke to a local journalist in the Wiltshire Times who came out to cover the story. And he went off, and I was in university in Cardiff at the time. So I was just in Wiltshire in a caravan, staying in a caravan for the summer. And he covered the story, and he had to go. When he went back to the office, his editor said to him, "You better check them out." And Wynne, the cameraman who had all the cameras, he was the guy that invented chip and pin. When you put the credit card into the machine and you punch in a 4-digit PIN number.
Yes, actually, and I've got to just stop you right there because we're getting ready to take a break. Okay. And I've got some questions when we come back, and we will continue to talk about that. But I am happy to have you here tonight. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified. It's Fantopia Friday. We've got some fantastic ladies coming up. Universal Child, Restricted Airspace, and Hyperspace. So stick around. We will be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everybody, and happy Fantopia Friday. I can't tell you how excited I am to see all of my friends in chat and to know that people are listening worldwide to UFO Classified. Please make sure you like UFO Classified on Facebook and share the love. Let people know about my show because I really strive to bring you good information, and I hope to inspire critical thinking with regard to this. The one thing that I have learned in my short public time researching this is that we have to really clean up the field. We need to involve ethical behavior. We need to call out people who are not ethical, and we need to work together to try to figure out what's going on. There's so much dysfunction in this, and that cannot be understated, especially with regard to what has happened in the UK with the crop circle research. I don't understand that, and my guest tonight, who is a veteran researcher, is here shedding some light on this. And Gary, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying up late. I know it's really, really late. I hope you've had a lot of coffee tonight.
I have, thank you. Yes, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Oh, well, this is important because it raises so many issues. Not only do you have this beautiful phenomena taking place that I believe, there's a majority of these crop circles that cannot be explained as easily as people attaching boards to their feet and then walking through wheat fields. I think there's much more to this, and it saddens me to see some of the really negative behavior. And I want to talk about that a little bit more and how that affects a witness coming forward.
Well, I mentioned Jesse Marcel earlier. If you think about what that did to that guy's life, if he had to live this lie, and this film's been made about, what happened to him and so on. And all the people that have gone against the grain and come out in a paradigm where it's not generally accepted, you end up having to stop talking about it. If you have a UFO experience, and you're going on your way to the pub and you see a UFO and you know that this thing shot off at a speed that is not natural and it must have been intelligently driven, you go into the pub to tell your mates and they laugh at you and make a few alien jokes, and you go home and try and tell your wife, and she listens for a while, but then says, "Okay, we'll go to sleep, dear. You've got to get up for work in the morning." And you either let it go, or the experience grips you in a way which you can't let it go. If you've got a certain tenacity to you, then something about it makes you look for more. And when you look for more, you find that there are thousands of other people, and you kind of end up joining what become a group of dissidents that can only talk about this stuff in their groups. And that's a shame, isn't it? Because surely something on this sort of scale does affect all of us. And when we think it does affect all of us, we come in our droves, okay? Everybody comes out of the closet. When the first Eastfield crop circle came down in 1990, the big pictogram, and sort of changed the paradigm in a big way, 10,000 people descended on these little lanes in Wiltshire, and cars were rammed all along the lanes and completely blocked all the farmers from getting in with tractors, because people just wanted to come to see the crop circle and stand on rooftops of their cars looking down into the field and so on. So when something big happens, there's a moment, okay, when everybody who really believes something's going on anyway, and talk about it in their little groups, get a glimpse where they go, oh, finally, some evidence maybe. And then it seems to be torn away in various ways by debunkers or hoaxers, and not being able to get to the story because you've got to go work in the morning. So you catch up a week later and you find out that some guy's come out and he spoke to a guy who knows a guy who's got a video, and he can assure us that it's all. And so, it's really difficult to get into the nitty gritty. And then if you leave your life and you say, right, I'm not going to be working in the law anymore. I'm going to go out and walk around in wheat fields for 10 years and try and get to some early and try and feel it from all sorts of different angles and all the rest of it, and find out what's really going on. Then your life changes and you find yourself more upfront with these people that are the people that sort of seem to do knee-jerk reactions to particularly crop circle events. I was seeing reports coming out almost immediately that this was a hoax, and these were coming out from people who hadn't even got all the information about Mothership Glass yet, but they were saying simply because it was a donation on the gate and because certain people took the photograph, it must be a hoax. And that was the only investigation that they'd made. I rang them up and said, have you spoken to any of the farmers and so on and so forth? And they said, no. I said, well, why are you publishing this stuff? I've got people down there right now who are talking to these people, and they haven't got a clue what's happened. So, you're an investigator that disseminates this information to the world, and you're jumping the gun. And so
And you were the person that, you actually found the connection with Mothership.
Well, I didn't. A friend of mine in Australia sent me the link to the company logo. And I looked at it and it blew my mind because of the similarity. It's almost identical, apart from the symbols around the outside that say Mothership, and we've got these symbols that we understand now. I haven't examined the whole glass jug, so I haven't examined all the symbols, but one of them certainly looks identical. Possibly another one. But they're symbols that are already in existence with this company, and are around the formation. And apart from the serrations on the leaf in the centre, it's identical. And so immediately I thought, wow, I've got to step back from this. This is, we've got this massive similarity here. And it's confronting what I'm hearing on the ground. So I asked this other investigator who's already releasing information about it being a scam if he'd heard about this company. I sent him the link to it, and he hadn't heard of it. But that only obviously reinforced him being able to then disseminate that information to the public immediately and say, here it is, here's the answer, it's a commissioned job. Before we'd got all of the facts, before we'd got an official statement from Mothership Glass, this was during, whilst I'm telling him that the farmer's denying it and the neighbours are denying it. And so then comes forward, they must be lying, they must be in on it, which then conforms with what Colin Andrews says later in his report, that the farmer's in on it. And that's where the controversy lie.
So basically, your friend from Australia, gave you this information, and you are the one who first, you were contacted by Karen and crew and informed about this circle, and you're the one who came forward with the evidence about Mothership, but yet all of this has been turned around by other researchers.
Absolutely, yeah. They say I'm biased towards trying to prove. It's funny, isn't it? So I was having a debate with somebody on Facebook the other day who's saying the burden of proof is on me to prove that ET did it. But that's not the way I look at it, really. If somebody who's an investigator makes a claim that this is made by people, I know the people, it took 3 days and it did this with the farmer. He's made certain statements, which I find to be contradicted with the statements I get from the people on the ground, namely the farmer and so on. So I'm not trying to prove ET in this instance. I'm trying to say there's conflict here with what one party's saying and the other party's saying. That's got nothing to do with, ET. It's got to do with what an investigator's putting out there, which doesn't seem to conform with what's on the ground. So that's a slightly separate issue to the authenticity. Now, when we then peel away the layers and say, okay, if the farmer's saying that this is, and I believe her that she's saying this, that this did appear overnight, then we've got this other confrontation where is something like this possible in the 5 hours or 6 hours of darkness that we get here in British summertime? And I don't believe it is, to make something that technically complex and that laid out. And what's another strange irony with this is that Karen Price regularly over the past year, she stopped it a couple of years ago, beats out a maze. She gets her boards out and she plans out and she makes these simple shapes that form a kind of maze that people can go in and walk around. And it's a way of bringing people onto the farm. She stopped doing it a couple of years ago, but she told me she's got photographs of this in her farm shop when you go to the till. She said that when she did the first one, it took her 6 weeks to actually execute it, not including the time of planning it and drawing out diagrams. And that she got better. She started doing some in 3 weeks. But when she looked at this picture of the overhead of the crop circle, having had experience of someone who knows what it takes to actually really go out and physically lift one leg up, stand on one leg, push the wheat down. You imagine how tired your legs get if you push down a ton of wheat in the dark while you're stopping to think and all of that. The physical execution of it. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's muddy ground and your feet are covered in like clay soil and they're really heavy and wet. So she knew that. And so when she saw this design, she couldn't really, she said to me she couldn't see how anybody could do this in the night because it's too complex and she could never do it.
So do you have any idea at all who would be the people that could have been capable of making this?
Nobody. In my view, nobody could be capable of making this. And this is the nub of the crop circle claimant issue, is that we haven't seen a real-time live demonstration of how these things. There's been 7,000 crop circles worldwide plus now. And the vast majority of them are these very large, very meticulously detailed. They never make a mistake, which is a very human trait. But to walk out of the field and get it bang on perfect every time, inch perfect, you know, to line some of these complex geometries up and so on. We haven't seen how they do it at night in the dark. All we ever see are demonstrations done on very flat ground, which take place in the daylight, like the Mozilla Firefox one that I mentioned earlier, and take a long time to execute. The more complex they are, the bigger they are, the longer they take. I took part in Ancient Aliens, a TV show last year, where they got 3 guys out to make a crop circle. They went out into a field, they beat one out that was 90 feet wide, very small really, compared to the 1,033-foot one that appeared in front of us in the 5 hours of darkness. And when you compared the lay inside, it was all smashed and beaten up. But they took 4 hours in daylight and flat ground. Now, when we see one that's 1,033 foot, like appeared in front of us, 150 circles in those 5 hours of darkness, because we recorded the whole night on camera, it's not disputed that it appeared in that time, then I have a real problem in how somebody could have sneaked in and done that under our noses without being seen, without any lights and so on. And for the vast majority of them, they all take on that characteristic where you struggle to believe that this could be done under those conditions. And we've never seen how they do it at night. They only ever demonstrate doing very small ones in the day under different conditions, and the result of the laid crop is never the same.
So describe why the lay of the crop is not the same.
Well, when you go into one that somebody's beaten down with sticks, it's that the crop has got a regular pattern where all the stalks are beaten, and they've got a line where they're smashed and crushed, and you can see a very mechanical. And when you look at an overhead, invariably the edges of the circles just haven't got this crispness to them, and some of the the way that they go together just doesn't intuitively feel right when you look at the overheads of them, the ones that we do know to be man-made. So the fact that people can go out and smash down wheat and make a design is not disputed, but there's a quality to a vast majority of them that I feel cannot be made under the conditions that all these ones appear under. On 777, when that one appeared in front of us, there were 6 other formations that night. This is another thing that people don't realise, is that we get multiple formations, 5 sometimes in a night, then there'll be none for a couple of days, then there'll be 3, and you can struggle to get round all of them just to visit them in the day, let alone for another 3 to appear overnight. You've got this massive time problem and conditions of the darkness. It's so dark. There's no lights in the farm countryside at night. It's just...
Well, and then you were telling me about the unevenness of the ground.
Right. So that's the other factor. I mean, you've got more complexity. The more complexity you add, the more time you must add. And so when a vast majority of the land isn't flat, it's undulating, particularly the one that appeared in front of us. So the biggest circle in the 777 formation was 161 foot by 140, I believe. And that means what they're doing is they're making ovals on the ground so that they look like they're circles from above, so that they appear two-dimensional when you see that picture postcard view. But when you get into one on the ground, you see that the lay of the land isn't flat, it's undulating, and therefore the geometry's been compensated in a way, made imperfect to look perfect from above, let's say. And that adds complexity that, you need theodolites and all sorts of stuff to try and overcome some of those problems. And to do it in the dark in 5 hours and keep doing it for 30 years, when no one gets caught, We've only got guys who claim they do it and then offer a demonstration that doesn't represent the same conditions. I'm not convinced. I need to see a proper demonstration. If they're so keen to convince us that they make them all, and the game's up, the mystery's over, why are they then just professing to deceive the world and create this controversy? Why don't they just end the debate and go out in the field with a proper demonstration where we can all sit on the hill at night and watch them knock one of these 1,000-footers out?
That would be good. I mean, I from my understanding, it would seem that the circle makers feel that there's some kind of spiritual paranormal connection and that they're divinely inspired. Am I wrong about that?
No, that's what they claim, that they get possessed by something when they go out and they think of a design, and there's all sorts of... So the paranormal can happen to them, but nobody else can have a paranormal experience. These are the very people who claim to have these paranormal experiences, see shadow men in the fields or have mysterious clouds cover them up when they're making a crop circle so the people sitting on the hill can't see them. And they have all this stuff happening to them. But as soon as somebody comes forward to say, I've had an event like I did on 777, these very same people are all over me claiming that I couldn't have possibly had a paranormal event at all. It's all man-made, shut up, go away.
That is another interesting factor.
They're the very same people.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, we have some of these people that come forward and say they're artists and doing all of these things. I mean, do you think that there are crop circles that have genuinely been made by these artists?
Yes, definitely. But here's the thing, right? If we add up, if I was able to have a table big enough now, Erica, right, where I could lay out 7,000 crop circles in front of you, pictures of them, and I said to you, look, let's have a little exercise. Let's sort out the ones we think are easily man-made. Let's look at some of the others under the conditions we know that they appeared under in the hours of darkness that I've described, and put some in a maybe pile. And let's push some others over to a pile where we say this, this stretches the bounds of possibility of what we think humans could do under those conditions. Then we're faced with, in the pile that we've moved the ones over to that we think that, with confronting another answer. And it's mysterious, right? So we can jump then straight away to ET and aliens, because that's another mysterious thing, that aliens are visiting us. And there's good reasons to look into all of that. Very definitely. But if we put that as one of the things on the table, as one of the cards, and then we look at maybe some other possibilities and we step back from it for a while on that mysterious pile that we've agreed on, we've accepted one thing, that there is a genuine mystery going on. Now, the percentages get bandied about, and that's another thing that Colin Andrews is famous for. He says his evidence shows that 80% of all the ones we see now are man-made, and only 20% of the simple circles are real. But he doesn't produce any evidence for that, because it confronts the evidence that I'm putting forward, saying, these big ones can't be possible, particularly the one I witnessed. So nevertheless, we're still confronted then with a genuine phenomenon, and we're arguing over the percentages. And we would be better served with each other if we agree that there are formations that are genuine, trying to focus on what they might be, what's going on with them from all those angles that I described earlier, so that we can try and find some answers together.
Absolutely.
Rather than fighting.
Absolutely. I mean, do you think that there's ever a hope of that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like to think of the best in humanity, and that, that we'll see that, we play silly games, and, whilst we're arguing over one thing, I don't know. It saddens me in some ways. I'm a big believer in, I'm a bit of an old socialist in a way. I'm a bit of a believer in the default place of humanity when war happens or whatever, people have to come together and cooperate, and, a form of communism takes over as the default position of crisis. People have to help each other out, and cooperation to me seems to me what helped build all the mystical stone circles here in this country. I don't think the people were dictated to that built those. I think there was a sense of cooperation that we can't imagine today. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've been programmed to be confrontational. It's like you would listen to a speech with somebody that somebody makes, and you'll find that someone might agree with 99% of what the guy says, but they'll pick on the 1% they don't agree with and fight over that rather than get on with the 99% that they agree with.
Right. And I couldn't agree with you more, because that is certainly the sentiment we have here in America, which is unfortunate not only in the UFO world, but in our political climate. And I feel when we have so many obstacles as people wanting to find the truth in front of us, that it would serve us better. It would be if we could all at least get along and be respectful. And hopefully that will happen. But we're going to get ready to take a break here. And then I've got 4 really great questions from the chat room that I want to ask you from my friends. Sure. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your personal experience and how that really shaped you and kind of moved this into a positive end for the show. This has been fascinating. And again, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
3 guys, no ties. What we're going to do, leave Obama in for 4 more years? So, no,
thank you.
I know, so we're kind of like, well,
no, thank you. You hear that? You heard what did you hear what he just said?
I know nothing.
Did you hear what he just said?
Very, very afraid.
He said he didn't want Obama in office any longer. Devin said that.
Hey,
he got his.
They have limits on terms for a reason.
He's coming around.
3 guys, no ties. Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific, right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Bowl for Life is a non-profit organization founded in 2013 by Chuck Gardner with one simple goal: to grow the sport of bowling worldwide. Over the years, Bowl for Life has given out thousands of dollars in scholarships to youth bowlers around the world. Our focus is to nurture integrity, honesty, professionalism, as well as respect into bowlers both young and old. You can help us by going to bowlforlife.com. Even the smallest donation goes a long way to breaking down the barriers and helping us assist people of all ages to improve their skills as well as knowledge of the game. Bowl for Life is happy to be partnered with other great organizations like the Youth Education Services Fund, as well as the United States Bowling Congress, with many spectacular integrated events planned in the near future. To learn more, go to bowlforlife.com. That's bowlforlife.com.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. An out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about. At least, not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For Hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everybody. And I always tell you this, but you know, our conversations with my fabulous producer, Tina Marie, and my guests are so fascinating. I wish you guys could hear them. We have great conversations. But I wanted to say I am ecstatic to be here again. I've missed you all so much. Thank you for spending your Friday night with me and then continuing to listen to KCOR. I'm happy to be on this very wonderful radio station. Tina Marie is a brilliant producer, and I appreciate her patience and her expertise. She's wonderful. My questions, Gary, in the chat room, I have a friend and a fellow researcher here in Utah, Jeff Cox, who wants to know, in the crop circle that we visited, was this woven? And yes, it was, but did the nodes expand or burst?
Not that I saw, no. But as I said, here's the thing. I didn't finish my point when we got onto that earlier. We probably went off on a tangent, which is very easy, and that's my fault. I'm sorry. But the bent nodes thing, yeah, it's been one of these things that people see as a litmus test, and for a genuine crop circle to get down on your hands and knees and do that kind of physical examination. I did it for a while, and because I was at that stage where I felt I needed to see to determine one thing from another, and I stopped doing it a long time ago. There's an example, canola, what we call rapeseed, the yellow flowered crop which comes up early in April and May. We get crop circles in those. Now, when that crop was being bent over, it's a very stick-like sort of celery consistency, more fibrous, but very fibrous stalk. And when it bends over, a lot of people were pulling them out of the ground, and there was a bend, a 90-degree angle on the root. And so a lot of people were running around saying, this must be made by aliens because you can't bend them. Because if you try to bend them with your hands in that fashion, they just break, they just snap. So for a long while, I was watching people run around with that and saying, this is the litmus test, right? We've got bent nodes on this crop that's impossible to do this to. So there we are, it's aliens. So then, a little inquiry then with the farmer and looking at this plant and how the seeds grow, and you realize that when you put the seed in the ground, it actually grows out for the first couple of inches at a 90-degree angle before it goes up. So that if you could push that crop over with a board, you're just pushing the crop over and the root comes out of the ground, you've got a 90-degree bend, there you are. So it doesn't prove anything. And therefore, if you use this as a litmus test for all crop circles are genuine, the breaking of that one piece of information then negates all other crop circles in so many people's eyes. But when I found out that information, that was because I was pursuing the truth. And I wanted to know, is this really right? I wasn't jumping to the conclusion ET had made it because it was a bent node. Let's take another look, right? And I found out that that's what happens when you grow the seed. So that's great. I know that now, and that doesn't negate all crop circles for me because there's these other factors. We can move on from that. But the danger of using it as a litmus test, bent nodes and so on, it's not one for me. I don't go in there and say it's bent nodes, blown nodes. Yeah, it's got to be genuine, because I don't know. There could be some other natural phenomena that causes that in wheat that I'm not a plant scientist to actually be qualified to say.
Right. And those are great thoughts. Thank you very, very much for answering that. So another question from UFO author is, do certain crop circle patterns change the mind of the viewer?
Can you say that again, please?
Do certain crop circle patterns change the mind of the viewer? Either, whether, I'm assuming that UFO author, maybe she can clarify this for me, but perhaps if you see a pattern, does it have some sort of effect on your psyche? Does that change the mind of the person that's in there? Does that make sense?
Yes.
She'll clarify that.
I'll answer this in line with the research that I've conducted, okay? You remember I mentioned earlier the 4 liberal arts, which were known as the quadrivium, which are number, geometry, music, and astronomy. Number being the primal, what a lot of Marie von Louise Franz says is the primal archetype, because we find it in the material world, we find it in our psyche. Music, organized in 5 and 8 octaves and so on. When we hear musical intervals, the ratios between the lengths of the string, which cause us to hear certain notes, they bypass the intellect, and we recognize when certain numbers put together, whether they make harmonious notes or disharmonious notes. So we're wired in a kind of way, primarily with number in time, which is music, to recognize harmony and disharmony by the musical intervals. Now, when we look at a piece of geometry, number in space, if you have a circle, there was a formation that appeared I think in July this year in Avebury. Sorry, not in Avebury. I can't remember the exact location. I'd have to look it up. But it's in the fields of Wiltshire here, where we had an outer ring of flattened wheat. And within the centre, a very beautifully the lathe of the crop had all been weaved into these patterns, which is another factor which, is a little unexplainable. And now that flattened area had a proportion to the diameter of that circle in its relationship to the outer ring. So much so that if you inscribe a triangle, an equilateral triangle in that outer ring, it will touch the sides of the triangle. The inner ring will touch the sides of the triangle. It's a perfect ratio of 2 to 1. It's called Euclid's second theorem. It was discovered by Euclid, the Greek philosopher and geometer. So this second theorem is an ever truth. It's something that's always been true. If you draw a triangle, put a circle inside it, and then draw a circle on the outside of that triangle, the inner circle will always be at a 2 to 1 ratio with the outer circle. Now, when we listen to music, if you've got a string on the top note of a string on a guitar, the whole string is an E note. So if we put our finger at the halfway point, divide it in a 2 to 1 ratio and strike the string again, we hear a ratio that's an octave higher. We hear the octave but a pitch higher. So there is a correlation between what we hear in musical harmony and intervals, the ratios between these lengths of string, and it correlates with what we see visually with our eyes when we see things that are proportional and have relationships to each other as number in space. And that makes us recognize something that's primal within creation, because creation is laid out in number. When we're born, we have 5 teeth in each quarter of our mouth, which fall out and are replaced by 8 teeth, 5, 8, and 13. These 3 numbers, which are part of the Fibonacci sequence, are everywhere. The 8 octaves in music and the perfect fifth. If you pick up plants and you count how many buds are on the stem, you'll find that there are 8 turns of the bud and there are 8 turns of the stem and there are 5 buds. Most flowers are 5 petals in life. So life is massively beating out 5, 8, 13 in our bodies and all around us in the world. Number is everywhere. So does it change our mind and psyche? Yes. If the theory of the anthropic principle that all is mind, that the universe is intelligent and that everything is mind, then and that the thing that links our minds to the metaphysical is number, then these correlations of our recognizing certain things in geometry and number in space is talking to us about something that's primal within consciousness. So yes, it does affect our psyche.
And that is beautiful. Thank you. I remember watching for the first time the video of you and your friends when you had your experience on July 7th, 2007. And I remember seeing the absolute wonder and awe and hearing you both talk about how you were dancing, you were jumping up and down after everything you had seen. And that was a very pivotal moment to you that defined the rest of your life. So go back to that initial feeling and what you experienced there? Because sometimes we get so bogged down, with the politics and all of that we forget the beauty of what is taking place.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't for a minute, because in my own story of what happened in the build up to that day, and that day in particular, the 6th of July, the day before I went up onto that hill, the things that had happened that seemed to be like people were being moved into place like chess pieces, coincidences, random, what would seem to be random encounters, all added up to something that conglomerates as a meaning for me in that whole event, that takes on another perspective that's subjective and personal. And I know that, you see. And the thing is that when I first come to the crop circle, well, a lot of people who experience strange phenomena, UFOs or whatever, their first impulse is to go and tell other people, because we need someone else to believe it with us so that we can kind of hold the weight of what the hell it is. It's a very big weight to hold on your shoulders, that you're confronting something that's other. And if you've been around the phenomenon for a while, like I had, that the first thing that people are going to do if you do come forward and say that is that they're going to try and take it away from you. And that's a deep and personal thing, particularly if it's been, the build up to it and all of the things that went on to build up to it are so deep and personal that, you've got to hold tight really with that experience, pull it into your belly, as my teacher used to say, and hold on to it for a while, ground yourself with it, right? But at the same time, you've got the press and how you're going to deal with it, knowing that what's going to come at you. And that journalist I told you about earlier, he called me up once he checked me out and checked us all out and said, they're going to come after you, don't you? And I said, yeah, we get that feeling. And it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as I imagined, really, because the press came and did the press conference and they all turned up to the pictures and all the rest of it. And we imagined that the next day's press was going to be explosive. But they didn't. They put it on some back page of one of the formations, and some other news headlines took precedent, and it only really appeared in the local newspapers to make any impact. So it was downplayed in a massive way in the mass media, this event. And the most flack that came at me was from, all the people that accused me of making it, or said I was in on it, or I was stupid and didn't see the people that were down or in the field, and I must be crazy for thinking that, anything else could happen. And I didn't say, a lot of people asked me, what do you think made it? What do you think made it? And I kept saying, I've got no idea. The only thing I can say is that I have massive, massive problems with believing that some guys went out and made that in front of me.
And that's exactly it. I mean, I think that the other two people that you were with, they can vouch for that. It was a very anomalous experience. And I just would like to know, are these the same people that are continually trying to discourage anybody from coming out? They're the same culprits.
They're the same guys. This is the irony. Okay. This is the irony, right? This is the whole strange psychological irony, right? They say that they make these things to push people to the edge of mystery, right? So then if people come out and say, okay, there's some mystery going on, they say you're crazy, and those are the people, then the ones that say they make it, they're the ones that attack you for anything authentic. So all the people that come at me were like Matthew Williams, all those sorts of people, the same people that claim they make the crop circles. So they're admitting in a way to kind of deceiving people so that if they fall for their trap, they're going to attack them. And then they say they want to remain anonymous and secret with their methods, but they keep wanting to put on these demonstrations which don't represent the same conditions to convince us that, it's like they draw a little kid's drawing whenever they do one of these demonstrations and say, because we do this, we're doing those Da Vinci's that keep appearing in the fields at night by inference, without a demonstration. So why does Batman want to wear a mask and then when someone comes forward and says, I saw Batman, they say, no, it was just us, right? It's just me, Bruce Wayne. I'm the one, you idiot. I don't get the psychology of playing both sides that they do.
No.
You know, either they're mysterious guys that go out and want to mystify us all, in which case they'd act like Mothership Glass and never say anything. And we'd have to believe that there's this secret guild of artists that have maintained a narrative of building on geometries and solving mathematical problems and making us look at ways to square the circle and stuff that have never been done before over 30 years, that have passed on their knowledge to new young generations who've also gone out in secret and never revealed their identities. It's just. I mean, you know, we're supposed to believe 10 teams come from Europe and every year and camp out here and make the crop circles, and yet no bed and breakfast ever see people coming in with muddy boots in the morning carrying boards. No houses get represented. How much money would it cost them to come over? And if a German team was at building crop circles and a French team and a Spanish team, they'd put tags on them to say this is a German one, this is a French one, because by nature we're competitive. They're like, you know, we go to the World Cup and we go to the Olympics, and the biggest thing is which country's coming home with the medals. So why wouldn't they make these wonderful works of art from Germany and put a tag on the side that said this is the German one?
Right, and it should be pretty easy, I would imagine, if somebody wanted to really dig in there to track these people, these artists, and then see when they're coming over and you know where they're staying, like you're saying. So I mean, it should be.
Apparently they're locals, and then there's teams of them that come over. But where do they stay? How do they fund themselves? They work then. They don't have to work because they're here for 6 months of the year. They pay less, you know, if there's 12 of them, they've got transport, petrol, you know what it's like to drive around the country. Everywhere you go, it costs fortunes. Petrol's really expensive here. So their budget must be huge because they can pay for their accommodation, food, they can design these things, they can go out and execute them, transportation costs, equipment, rent in a new property because they're over from abroad. God, if there's 12 of them, they could go through £50,000 just to go out and give us free logos that we could put on our company designs without any copyright claims or anything. They don't want to claim them. We can use any one the crop circle designs for any company logo we wanted. We wouldn't have to pay an advertising agency to come up with a logo. We can just pick from one of the 7,000 crop circles because no one's claimed them.
Isn't that fascinating? And I really hope that, you know, this has kind of opened some people's eyes in America to some of the disinformation that we're getting. And I think that we have to, again, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, we have to become critical thinkers. And we cannot accept one person's statement followed by another and the snowball effect and discredit or discount things until we put the research into this, especially when it comes to discrediting somebody and potentially affecting their livelihood. We need to be diligent with regard to that. I have another question here in the chat room. Has anyone ever put forth the theory that crop circles are created by the military sat beam weapon?
Yeah, that one's been around. I can't take two different approaches to it, really. I mean, the military are pretty much focused on creating weapons that kill you. They like to find new and inventive ways to kill us with their research, to kill off the human being, not to you know, they use other means for different things. But I can't imagine a bunch of military generals sitting around a table thinking, right, we need a new weapon to scare Saddam. So let's put billions of dollars into making pretty formations in wheat so that we can freak out all the hippies or the mystery hunters over a 30-year campaign. Because the cost of putting a satellite into space and the payload, I suppose, it would have to carry, and the fact that it's doing 30,000 miles an hour, that's got to beam this laser that would, I think, probably fry the crop, you know, because it's got to have such a controlled burst of 4 milliseconds is the impact time that the energy hits the wheat, is from what's been determined by Levengood's research, without frying it and catching the field on fire, to be shooting by at 30,000 miles an hour. If the military put all their money into developing something like that, I think it would be to knock out weapons and do those sorts of things rather than create crop circles, because that's the sort of money and resources. And I don't know the technical resources of what satellite stuff would have to payloads. Perhaps somebody else can inform me on that, but I just don't think it's feasible, frankly.
I agree with you. Those are great points. And I want to really quick, we did not talk about Michael Glickman, but I want to say thank you so much for introducing me to him. He was absolutely a charming, intelligent individual. And I want to tell everybody that Michael has written some wonderful books. One I have on my desk here, which is Crop Circles, The Bones of the God. But you can find his work, which is, you can go to michaelglickmancropcircles.com, find that, purchase some of his books. He was a delightful, intelligent man. So please do that. And your relationship with him, your respect for him is a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, Michael's my best pal in the crop circles, it has to be said. We're pals. He's an insightful man. People unfortunately say nasty things about him, but I've known Michael for almost 10 years now, and we speak almost every day on the phone, more than once. He's a man who suffers from MS, and he's had that for 25 years now. Pretty much his whole career of the crop circles, MS has been with him from beginning to where he is now. His dedication and his insightfulness into some of the geometry in the crop circles inspired me to look at the work of all the geometry that had been done, particularly in the early years, by little known people in the crop circles these days. The great John Michel, the books he's written on sacred geometry and crop circles, John Martineau, Wolfgang Schindler from Germany. Some of these guys pulled hidden geometry from crop circles, what you don't see in the fields are templates for other geometries that can be built, which have shown us relationships. There's been discoveries, for example, I mentioned the 5-8-13 thing. This is the sort of stuff that Michael kind of introduced me to the people who come up with this stuff. Venus, our nearest planet, if we fix the Earth and watch the path that Venus makes around us, it goes out behind the sun and comes in and comes close and goes retrograde and then goes back out behind the sun and comes back. And Venus is our nearest planet. And it's really curious, all the 5, 8, and 13s that I told you about earlier that are everywhere on Earth and in us. It's curious to find that Venus, the planet, comes into us 5 times, draws a beautiful 5-fold rosette in the sky around us over 8 Earth years or 13 Venus years. So to know that our nearest planetary neighbour is massively also beating out this 5, 8, 13 that's so pervasive on Earth, and that John Martineau made that discovery with Venus because of his study of crop circles and the hidden geometry that he pulled out of it.
Isn't that beautiful? And I just wish, again, like I want to continue our conversations, and I will have you back, and I will be calling you this week and touching base with you. But where are you going to be speaking next?
I'm going to be in Milan at the end of October, a UFO conference that's free. It's a free admission. It's being organised by a man called Antonio Urzi, who's filmed numerous UFOs outside his building in Italy. He's followed around by them. I was in Mexico with him in 2010, and they're all standing out the side of the World Trade. The conference was at the World Trade Center, and they're all standing outside. Everybody kept going outside to look up at the sky, because every time Antonio Urzi went outside, there was a silver ball of light right up in the sky.
That is amazing, and we've got to wrap it up. We've got 1 minute left before show close, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying up late. I will be posting your upcoming lectures and all of the wonderful research that you're doing. Please give Michael my love. And to all of my friends out there listening tonight, I could not be happier to be here with you again. I've missed you. Please send your thoughts and comments and questions to UFO Classified on Facebook. My website is ufoclassified.com. Check out Gary King's research. Watch his videos. He is brilliant, and I'm happy to have this friendship with him, and I hope he can teach me much more. Please be safe on this holiday weekend. Stick around for brilliant women coming up with Universal Child, Restricted Airspace, and Hyperspace. I will see you next week on UFO Classified with Dr. Richard Haynes. Be good and stay out of trouble, because, I probably won't. See you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.